And I want to approach stress, anxiety, and depression maybe in a different way than you're used to hearing about it. We often talk about the nuts and bolts of stress management, and Dr. Schiffner did a wonderful job of telling us about the nuts and bolts. But it's interesting, and what I found is, talking with these hundreds of lawyers around the state, they often know about the nuts and bolts. They know they should be exercising. They know they need stress management. And that's part of their problem. They know about it, but they don't do anything about it, and we're all guilty of that. But I want to address another aspect of it that you don't hear about very often. And I wanted to begin by telling you a little bit about myself. I grew up in Newfane, New York, which is a small town outside of Lockport. And I am the fourth in a family of 5 children. And it was an idyllic place to grow up. It's in the countryside, and I hunt for frogs and played outside all the time, and was really a kid who loved nature. And when I became a little bit older, maybe I was about in 8th or 9th grade, my teacher gave me a book to read, and probably many of you have read it, To Kill a Mockingbird. For those of you who aren't familiar about it, it's about a small-town lawyer in the Deep South in the 1930s who takes on an unpopular cause by defending a wrongly accused black man. And it's a wonderful story, and I've read it a lot over the years, several times. But I'm not sure if you know, and I didn't know till I reread it recently, that there's a wonderful quote in the beginning of the book. And it says, lawyers, I suppose, were children once. Lawyers, I suppose, were children once. I thought, what a powerful statement. I was a child once, and so were all of you. And now we're all lawyers, and a lot has happened to us in the interim. It's interesting, I wonder sometimes why Harper Lee chose that quote. And I did a little research. Charles Lamb lived a long time ago in the 18th century in England, and became a famous poet and novelist. And what's interesting was he wasn't a lawyer, but his father was. And you can only imagine what he observed in his father to come up with that quote. Interestingly, later on in his life, Charles Lamb suffered from depression and was institutionalized a number of times for, back then they called it melancholy. Melancholy. But what does all this have to do with why we're here today? Stress, anxiety, and depression. I was thinking about it, and in particular I was thinking about the hero of the novel, Atticus Finch. And Atticus, the name Atticus comes from the Greek word meaning unshakable. Unshakable. Another way we might think about it in modern times is resilient. And a lot of lawyers today, when you think about stress and ways of combating stress, aren't very resilient. And what happens to all of us, we get stress-related diseases. Heart disease, cancer. Some people, unfortunately, develop heart attacks. And Atticus, not only was he resilient, but he was a man of integrity. Integrity. And being that he was that kind of person, it made me want to become a lawyer when I grew up. And I think that it's difficult in today's stressful climate for lawyers to practice with integrity. And what I'm about to say to you, and I say this from the bottom of my heart, but also from talking to hundreds of lawyers, is that practicing without integrity is stressful. So many lawyers, above and beyond the nuts and bolts of stress management, feel that their integrity is assaulted every day by clients who don't believe them, by judges who often may not believe them, and by opposing counsel. And we carry that burden with us, don't we, as lawyers, wondering if we're good people, wondering if we're people of integrity. I think this kind of connects to another point I want to talk about Atticus Finch and maybe what he has to teach us today. And one of the things Atticus Finch did at the end of his days, and particularly in the movie, which is a wonderful movie in case you've never seen it, with Gregory Peck, is that at the end of the day you often would see him sitting on his rocker on his front porch and just thinking. Atticus was a person who took time to reflect, about his cases, about the people he was representing, and was his life going in the right direction? And I think as lawyers dealing with stress, we need to think about that. Do we take time to reflect on our practice and who we are as people? And are we going in the right direction? Sometimes stress is just not out there. It's not about the clients, and it's not about the judges. It's about us and how we process things internally. And I think if we don't give ourselves time to reflect, it's almost like never giving yourself time to digest a meal. You know, you're always running. And what happens is the pace of our life has come to define our experience as lawyers rather than the meaning of our lives and the meaning of what we do as lawyers. And I think that contributes an enormous amount of stress, because people at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of the year, and now I've been practicing 21 years, it's hard to believe, wonder if they've had enough meaning in their life, wonder if they've lived their life with enough integrity. And by saying those things, I'm not judging anyone here. I'm not saying to you, you don't live your life with integrity or you don't take time to reflect. But I know in my own life as a litigator, I consume stress. It was like coffee running through my bloodstream 24 hours a day. And I never had the time to catch up with myself. And I think it's only when I did later on in life that I realized there's some things I had to change about my life. And one of the things my psychologist said when I finally got to one years later, he would listen to me complain about my stressful life. And he had a computer screen in front of him. He had a computer, and he turned it around to let me see what had been written on it. And it said, "What next?" ? We all can complain about stress. And I guess it's important to share those struggles with other people, but the real question is, where the rubber meets the road, is what are you willing to do about it? How much are you willing to change your life? Many people aren't willing to do that. And then we wake up later on in life and say, geez, what happened? Why am I in this place? Why do I have stomach pains? Why do I have heart disease? Why do my joints hurt? Because we've been assailed by stress all those years, and we've never taken the time to reflect on what it's doing to us as people. And I believe it makes us a less effective lawyer as well. So there's two things to think about with stress, I think: integrity and reflection.